Yes, ma'am.
I've got several questions, but I'll just start out with one, because I've been kind of confused about some of the things about the hospital district, and I think I have a clearer picture now. And you can stop me if I'm saying something that's not quite accurate, but I talked to Mike Ford today about some of this, and it looks to me like there's a bright line between what Somerville County, the county owns, which according to the lease that I've seen is the hospital, the land, and the equipment that they're leasing out to the Glen Rose Medical Foundation as a private foundation entity for $1 a year. And then there was that certificate of obligation back in March and April of this last year in 2008 for $14.5 million that was loaned out to the Glen Rose Medical Foundation. And I was asking Mike Ford today, I said, well, suppose that, I mean, because in my way of thinking, the Glen Rose Medical Foundation is great, but equally it could be some other hospital entity or clinic entity that was leasing the equipment from Somerville County. I said, what happens if something happens and the Glen Rose Medical Foundation was not able to pay back the $750,000 a year for this certificate of obligation? He said, not to worry because our taxes have taken care of it. And I thought, okay. And I went home and my husband reminded me that the Somerville County raised taxes in September of 2008 to cover the cost of the certificate of obligation. So my question first is, if Glen Rose Medical Foundation ended up being the entity that contracted with the Somerville Hospital District when it's created to go ahead and run the hospital, with this obligation, if you're paying back also the $750,000 a year that pays off this obligation for the certificate of obligation, is there a plan for Somerville County, do you know, to then lower the taxes for people that are already paying higher taxes because of that?
I'm not sure I quite understand your question. I think you were right in most of the statements that you did make. The only thing I can tell you is what occurred. When a county issues a certificate of obligations, they're required to put into their budget 1-year payment.
Right.
They required last May, when the certificate of obligation were issued, to set a tax rate so that 1 full year of payments would go into this budget.
Right, and
so
I went back. Yeah, and I listened back to that hearing in September 2008 after the budget was passed, and that's what Judge Maynard said. He said that this was partly to cover the bonding indemnification of the hospital expansion for the certificate of obligation.
That's exactly right. And we, at that time, as you saw the third slide on financial performance of the hospital over the last 9 years, and with the strategies that were in place, it was at that point we were comfortable that the foundation could service the debt. Okay. Obviously, with what occurred, $1.3 million increase in bad debts and charity. Okay. Our doctors moving to a competitor. Seeing our gross revenues change, that changed our financial performance. So that's when we felt that from a foundation standpoint, we need to look at the hospital district to take care of the funding.
Well, now, just to clarify for me, then the certificate of obligation money that right now Glen Rose Medical Foundation is slated to pay back, would that get rolled into the hospital district then at that point, as opposed to being a separate payment by the...
Yeah. The indebtedness will now become part of the hospital district and roll off the county books.
I see. So it wouldn't be the Glen Rose Medical Foundation that pays it back. It would then be the county taxpayer that pays back the certificate of obligation that we had our taxes rate for.
It would be part of that 7-cent tax rate would go to service the debt.
Okay.
Now, 2 years from now, this hospital could perform at the projected level after overcoming these obstacles this year. At that point in time, there would be money from the hospital's operations that would go back to retiring the indebtedness, and that could possibly lower the tax rate with the hospital district if the hospital, overcomes these obstacles that were encountered this year.